Now, I actually said at the beginning of this interview that I'd like to flip through the pages because it takes me through a year in review. What do you do when you open up the book for the first time and see all of your cartoons for the past year? What is that feeling like?
It's actually really nice. Well, you know, it's my 20th. It's my 20th annual, so I have had that many times before, and I've had 3 other books. You know, I've had a sport book and a democracy book, the Democracy, and the Vuvuzela Nation was the sport, and Democracy, and the big one on Nelson Mandela. So, it's a wonderful feeling, especially if they've done a good job, which you know they I believe they have, and there's a lot in the last 2 years. There's been a lot more colour in these books because we're now able to do that, and you know, when I get the chance to do a colour cartoon. Basically, I do colour when I feel it's necessary. So I've got a real luxury. I can do the black and white, which I love doing, but every now and then I just want. So this one with King Goodwill.
What makes it necessary for
I just had that image of him like with this fire breath. Xenophobe. I thought I really want that orange. I want to really get pyrotechnic in that. Yeah. And then something I said, and he's lit up the whole of KZN in these terrible xenophobic attacks, which he refused to acknowledge. And then, you know, then later I did another one of him after he'd sort of made some other statement where he still refused to acknowledge that he'd said anything wrong. I mean, really, you go back to the speeches, it was terrible. But again, I wanted colour for this one, where you have the red carpet, and so it's a carpet of blood that's rolled out onto these immigrants or migrants or these people who. It's such a weird concept. I mean, everybody has come here at some time in history and been new to a particular area. I mean, it just depends how far you go back. And that's the same in every country. I mean, places get populated. And then people who've established something, you know, get very jealous about their space. And that's not to deny the pernicious effects of colonialism. I'm just talking about general migration of populations. Colonialism is another thing entirely. Yeah.
Now, speaking of cartoons with color, what kind of effect do you think that color gives to the cartoon? What kind of dramatic effect does a color cartoon have versus a black and white one?
I mean, color's a very emotive thing. So, I mean, when you have red for blood, or when you have a color flag that's quite emotive and nice and colorful, and you in some way subverting it. I think it's a very emotional thing, the color thing, as well as in some instances being a big signal of the power of something. Because you know, sometimes I'll make something color if it's about a flag, because I want to see that flag in full color. In years gone by, I used to find ways to do that in black and white, but I enjoy being able to pick and choose now and play around. Sometimes the color is to make something actually vibrant and fun.
Yeah.
The rugby cartoon I did of the giant kiwi with all it's really nice to see everyone in there, all these other animals. I picked all these animals in their different uniforms, and it's kind of fun to be able to do that as well. It gives it sort of it's kind of lightweight and different, and because you don't want to always just hit people over the head with the harsh stuff.
Yeah.
You know, there's a couple of cartoons about Johnny Depp and rugby and whatever in this book as well.
Speaking of the color cartoons, you actually just reminded me that you're speaking about rugby. The Springboks losing to Japan one I thought was quite funny, and it's also in color, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Japan.
That's all we can do.
You know, Japan, they played out of their skins. They played brilliantly. And they're such an improved team, and it was wonderful to watch them. As terrible as it was to see South Africa lose, I really, really loved watching Japan and the way they played and how well they were coached by Eddie Jones. But they were also called the Brave Blossoms.
Yeah.
I mean, any rugby team, our cricket team is the Proteas, and the rugby would probably be Proteas if it weren't for a little bit of a rearguard action by people who still support the Springbok. I mean, Springbok, as many of the other countries have, an animal is a more sort of potent figure for sport, a more active kind of figure than a flower. The English have the roses, but you see, I use the bulldog for the English, and like that other.
Yeah.
There's always an animal you can find, but to have the brave blossoms, carving the springbok up into sushi, sushi style.
It was great. It was incredible.
It was fun.
Now, one more color cartoon I want to talk about is the Homo Naledi one.
Yeah. National Theocratic. Evolution is a Eurocentric plot, Natole Mochecha. And the almost human thing came from, that was an actual parody of the National Geographic cover, which said almost human, talking about, obviously had an image of Homo Naledi.
Yeah.
So almost these, and Natole Mochecha completely questioning evolution. And so Homo Naledi says, I have a brain the size of an orange, what's your excuse? And it was a very controversial cartoon because people who question evolution, it's really difficult. It's a difficult subject to broach because most of the people who question evolution are completely misunderstanding what evolution is.
Yeah.
So they think even, whether or not they even give credence to the fact that human beings and every other living organism evolved in a progression. That's one thing. But they actually believe that evolutionists are saying something that evolutionists may have been saying 150 years ago, which is that, people evolved from apes and monkeys and whatever. That's not the case. It's a fundamental misunderstanding of evolution. We may have had a common ancestor, and then there's this tree and branch out, and we all a long time ago came from some common ancestor, and then apes and monkeys evolved here, and hominids evolved there, and from one branch of those hominids came human beings, that sort of thing. So it's quite hard to argue with really people who are so koptu. Natole Mochecha just gets my goat. Every time he opens his mouth, all my hackles rise. He is the most bigoted idiot in Parliament. And he sort of is, to me, he's the actual epitome of what is wrong with the ANC. It's like this dogma and the lack of understanding of the real world and of people on the ground, and he's stuck in another corner of I don't know what intellect, and also he thinks he's such a great intellect, and he thinks his particular version of Africanism is what everybody must just swallow whole. He can't sort of bring into his orbit that his is one of many ways of thinking. I don't have much time for religion generally, but his particular brand of dogma just gets me. Okay, so you got me there now.
I got you there. I'm going to reel you back in.
Yeah.
I feel like we could be here all day.
Yeah.